informational and educational things. Hopefully this is more actionable for each one of you who's joining here. So what happens? What happens when you, first of all, don't have a good product manager? And we'll get into the definition of who the product manager is, but it's very important to understand the effect of not having one, or a good one. So the first thing that happens is this. And obviously the kid is not happy, with this tricycle because, the engineering guys built the bicycle that they were asked to build. Of course, the engineering guys probably didn't have the right customer context. And so that's what happens when you don't have the customer context, when you don't have a great product manager who's bringing that customer context, who's bringing the actual market problems that we're trying to solve, and then the context in which the solution needs to be presented back, this is what happens, right? So this is time and time again we've seen, and this is industry agnostic, by the way, whether it's high tech, whether it's pharma, building the wrong product is almost a fallacy that happens in almost every industry, because a lack of product management vision or a lack of great product managers driving the process. The second thing that happens is this. Now, this is a picture that you probably have seen a couple times. Boy, every time I see this picture, I still get amazed. This is an actual jug that was made in the 17th century, I think in northern part of Europe, and it was made with the best porcelain, right? So this was like the best material ever invented. So while structurally it was one of the innovative things to do, highly, highly unusable, for obvious reasons that you can see. So that's the second disaster that happens in companies and products where you don't have a good product manager who's leading the process of productizing. You build something that's fairly innovative. You build something that's fairly perhaps inventive from an engineering perspective, from a technology perspective, but certainly fails to bring the delight, certainly fails to bring the wow factor from a design experience, from an experience perspective, and it certainly leaves a bad taste. And this is also true for just about any other industry that you can think of, right? So that's kind of second peril that happens when you don't have that. Now this is the third one, and this one I see a lot more in Asia than I see in Europe and US, where we try to over-engineer our products, right? So this little picture is a funny picture because you almost have like an 8.5. The half guy is on suspension mode, as you can see on the bike, so he's not taking a seat. So almost 8.5 guys riding this bike, and while that sounds funny, if you actually introspect and look at your own products, you will probably find something like this. Too many features. In fact, so many features that either the customer is completely confused how to use it, or even the engineers forgot that, oh, by the way, we had added this thing in the last release, right? So we somehow get into this feature war just because the competitive pressure, sales pressure, and there's this notion of more is better. In fact, if you look at companies who've done it completely on the flip side, companies like Apple, it's completely the other way around. I mean, if you look at the Harvard case study written on Apple when they released the iPhone, they have only 32% of all features that all existing smartphones had at that time were available in an iPhone. And yet, obviously, it's a blockbuster product. So the correlation between more features and success is proving continuously to be wrong. And so this is what happens, again, when you don't prioritize it, when you don't have the right business value attached to your roadmap and your requirements for the roadmap. So these are some of the things that you might have seen as a direct consequence of many reasons, but certainly a direct consequence of not having a good product management process as well as a good product manager at the helm of it. So what is this product management process? And this is one thing that I'd like to make a clear distinction in the minds of everyone who's here, which is, the word product management is sometimes misinterpreted because the word product management is used for the productizing process or the product management process. And it's also used for the individuals or the roles or titles of people who play the role of the product manager, and those two are different. And I'm going to try and make a clear distinction between the product management process, which is different than the product management role. So what is this product management process? At the very core of this, there are 5 phases, no matter what your product is. Everything from a soap all the way to a rocket, everything from a mobile app, everything from a small widget all the way to a complex ERP software application. They essentially have 5 phases when you look at the product lifecycle management. And as you go from idea to building a sustainable business. First is understanding value. Now this is the most important part, often the ignored part, where you're trying to go and apply lots of formal, informal market research techniques to figure out really what is the customer problem you're trying to solve. What is the difference between the customer needs and the customer want, right? What do they really want versus what are they asking for? There's this whole notion of customers don't know what they want, and literally that is true in some cases, because they are communicating to you in their own language, and that might not be the correct way of understanding the problem. It's up to the product manager to really understand the value of what you're trying to build. And this is hard, but with the right experience and the right exposure, this is the most important reason why products succeed actually. It's not necessarily the engineering innovation, it is the latching of the what we call product market fit. So getting the right fit for a problem that is actually worth solving. Not all problems are worth solving, obviously. Even though it is a legitimate problem, people might not have the right appetite to pay for it. People might have, customers might have the appetite, but they might not have the budget to pay for it. So obviously all of those have to be factored in when you figure out which market problem you want to solve. The second part is something that I find a lot of product managers in India especially are fairly good at it, which is the whole process of creating the value, creating the products, defining the requirements of the products, in some cases, helping get a kind of a mock-up, a skeleton, the architecture side of it, right, all of those. So that's kind of the defining of the product, so creating value. The third is you're capturing the value. This is all about how do you monetize what you've built? Now, monetization doesn't mean you have to always have a price tag. If you look at the emerging models where everything from Google Mail to LinkedIn, they're all following a free model, right? So, in fact, the economy in the business model is called freemium. You start with free, and at some point, some customers start using it, get used to it, and love it so much that they start paying for it, which means they become a premium customer. And so that becomes a freemium business model, free to premium, freemium. So how do you capture value? This is a very important element, and it's quite evolved actually. It's very different than what it used to be even 3 years ago, and I bet it will be very different 2 years from now than it is today. It's a highly evolving space on how to capture, how to monetize. The fourth part of the productizing process is obviously communicating the value. And this is where you've built the product. Now, how do you message that right? How do you brand that? How do you position that? How do you use the right channel of communication? Back in those days, almost just 5 years ago, there were classic ways to communicate. You have your TV, your billboards, your commercial, radios, and so on and so forth. Now there are 3,000 social media channels alone. To be able to talk to it. I mean, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, these are just the big ones, but there are several small ones. So how do you find the right channel to communicate the message that you have? The last one, which is a very important one, is the whole experience design, and this is where delivering value comes in, right? So you've built the product, but you don't have an ecosystem to take that product and to deliver that amazing value that you've built, that you've created, this is what we call the last mile, right? So a lot of products fail actually in this phase of the productizing process, primarily because they didn't either pay attention or just roll the die and hoped that everybody is just gonna figure out a way to get it. And this is actually becoming more so crucial in new business models like software as a service, where you're directly reaching out to the end customer without an intermediary or without a channel. And so how you deal with that delivering value is something directly falls back in the product manager's bucket. So this easy to follow, obviously difficult and sometimes not very predictable to exercise. But this straightforward process is what we call the value management process. A lot of people call it the productizing process, value management process. But this, in a sense, is your product management process. Understanding value, creating value, capturing value, communicating value, and finally delivering that value. Right? So that's kind of product management process. Now, the product management role, and again, I'm using the word role and not title. Title in India are highly creative, and I'm being very polite when I say that. I mean, I've seen some very amazing and yet very crazy titles when it comes to different folks that I meet. So titles are very creative all around the world, but especially in India. But that's not what I'm referring to. You might be doing a product management role irrespective of what you are being called as a title on your business card. Right? So I'm referring this to the product management role. And so that is the guy who's essentially responsible to orchestrate this entire process, to work with a cross-functional team to make this product management process a success. That is the role of a product manager. Right? There's obviously a cross-functional team. One person or one team cannot do, one set of product managers cannot do anything in the world. You need a supporting team and you need a cross-functional team, which we'll talk about as well, but this is the crux of a